You are born into a city that eats its young and calls the feast civilization. A boy, small-boned, with a face people remember without wanting to because it resembles someone they cannot forget. You don't know yet that resemblance is a currency. You don't know yet that it is also a trap. Your name is Sporus. It means seed, an insult that will ripen into prophecy. Picture this: an emperor who mistakes the echo for the voice, the copy for the original, grief for love. Picture a palace so bright with gold leaf that daylight behaves politely inside it, laying itself down like a trained animal. Picture the quiet corridor where a decision is made about your body and the louder room where your new name will be announced. Picture survival as a costume. You are chosen before you know you've been seen. You begin with work, with errands, with the weight of amphorae on sore wrists, with the cut and measure of a city that counts its people like coins. Perhaps you belong to a household. Perhaps you are a slave, the way most people in Rome are furniture that breathes. You learn to move without knocking things over. You learn that the safest place is the place no one looks at twice. You learn sounds, the grind of millstones, the creak of cartwheels, the flute that calls men to wine and women to warning. You learn smells, olive brine, river damp, herb smoke, the iron tang of blood when the butcher rinses his stones. You learn the rules, that thick lace of law and custom that binds the empire's limbs while its hands do anything they want. And then you learn fire. The city burns in 64 AD. It runs like a red animal through timbered insulae, jumps streets and rivers, eats temples and bakeries, devours doorways you have once leaned against to catch your breath. The emperor sings while the city cracks, they say. Another says he opens his gardens to the homeless. People will always say two things at once about a man like that. You breathe soot for weeks. You dream of roofs. You watch a new palace rise on the ashes, Domus Aurea, the golden house, where even the ceilings sparkle like captive constellations. You are still nobody. That is your protection, until it isn't. You hear whispers of a woman, Poppaea Sabina. Her face rides the air like a coin. She is beautiful the way a knife is beautiful, a line, a glint, a promise. She is the emperor's wife. She is the emperor's mistake. One night, in that glittering house, she dies. A kick. A rage. A rumor moving faster than truth. She is pregnant, was, people say, with the son the emperor could not bear to wait for. He will later build fountains. He will later write songs. He will later insist on being applauded correctly. But he cannot raise the one ruin that matters. He cannot make Poppaea breathe again. Grief goes looking for a body to live in. It finds yours. You are noticed the way prey is noticed. For resemblance, the angle of your cheekbone, the way your mouth at rest seems to apologize, the softness that time hasn't yet touched. A steward speaks to a steward. A freedman speaks to a guardsman. A guardsman speaks to you. Come, he says. You go because boys go when Rome calls, and because you think there are kinds of harm you have already survived. You have not yet learned the empire's favorite trick, to make you complicit in your own erasure. They tell you words that sound like a blessing but are instructions to a blade. For honor, they say. For the emperor. For Poppaea. You are promised silk for pain, gold for blood, safety for surrender. You are promised a place. How generous to be promised your place. Castration is a door that swings one way. It is an absence made permanent, a future collapsed into a single room. The details are not for spectacle here. You know them in your bones, your sleep, the hushed way you move afterward. What matters is what the city now calls you. Safe, useful, soft. What matters is the name his court begins to test in your presence, Like a shoe they will force you to fit. Sabina. You are dressed in her colors. You taste powder on your tongue when the face paint dusts your cheeks. Your hair is curled, then curled again until it resembles a woman who is no longer here to defend it. A maid speaks to you not as to a boy, not yet as to a woman, but as to a problem she has been paid to solve. Hold still, she says. Smile smaller, she says. Walk as though the floor is watching. You learn a new alphabet. Veil, brooch, coal, perfume. You learn the choreography of an empress's life, how to enter a room as if the room has been waiting for you, how to accept flowers as if your hands invented the idea of beauty, how to keep your voice a half step from silence. And you learn his gaze. That is the hardest lesson. It is a leash that reaches you even when you are alone. He calls you Papilla once, then again. Then he corrects himself and calls you Sporus with a smile that says the mistake was a test you have passed by letting him fail it. Sabina, he tries, tasting the name like a fruit. Sabina, he decides. Your seed name is gone. You are now the echo that must answer to the name of a ghost. Rome gathers because Rome always gathers for theater. And everything the emperor does is theater with consequences. The priests chant. The incense knows its cues. The emperor takes your hand. His fingers are warm. Yours are obedient. The dowry is announced, more money than you have ever seen and will never control. The ring is placed. The vows are said. The empire corrects its public face to accommodate a private wound. Some laugh. A few cheer too loudly to signal their loyalty. Most watch, silent, practicing the art of surviving a spectacle. The face that is neither approval nor outrage, only endurance. Afterward, there is wine. There is always wine. There is also the night. We will not linger there. You know what happens. You know how a bed can be a stage, a grave, a machine. You lie beside a man who needs you to be someone who is dead, and somehow this is how you go on living. In public, you are placed where she would be placed. When he sings in the theater, because Nero is an artist, because Nero is an emperor, because no one will leave the amphitheater until the emperor is done, your seat is Papea's seat. When he drives chariots, you stand where Papilla once stood, and the dust from the track salts your lips with a taste like old coins. He insists on applause with a rhythm he has invented. No, like this, he instructs Rome, and Rome learns the beat of his self. At banquets, he leans close enough for you to count the small scars on his cheek where boyhood acne went to war and lost. He asks, "Do you remember?" And you say, "Yes," and both of you agree to the lie. He tells stories about Papilla, then looks at you as if those memories were your homework. He places on your shoulders a shawl that once lived on hers, and for a moment the air is thinking very hard about whether to become a ghost. You are married to longing. The man is incidental. You learn the court the way a sailor learns currents. Tigellinus, the prefect whose smile is a blade, Seneca, the philosopher whose words are a mirror he holds up to his own compromise, Petronius, the arbiter of taste whose suicide will later read like a performance. They all look at you differently, as a joke, as a threat, as an omen that a man's grief will make the city do anything. The Pisonian conspiracy cracks open like a rotten fig in 65 AD, and truth spills out. Senators can dream of stabbing their way back to liberty, but the emperor still owns the knives. Friends of the emperor drink poison for him. Their blood is the varnish on the stage where he performs sorrow. You sit to the side in her chair, your hands folded so beautifully that even venom lowers its eyes around you. There is another wife, Statilia Messalina, with the sort of patience that turns into a province all by itself. She is legal, you are theatrical, and both of you are real in different registers. When she glances toward you, it is not contempt you see. It is perhaps the pity of a woman who understands exactly how a man can invent a world and then force others to live inside it. You travel. The Emperor needs new rooms to hear his voice bounce off of. Greece is summoned as an audience. He competes in games that suddenly agree they were always meant for emperors. He races a 10-horse chariot and is crowned victor even when he falls out before the finish. He sings tragedies while no one coughs. He declares a canal will be cut through the isthmus at Corinth, and men dig at rock with tools that feel like jokes against stone. You stand at his side, draped in Poppaea's fabric, while the sea considers whether to applaud. They call you Augusta to your face. They call you boy when your back is turned. They call you Poppaea when the emperor wants to test the weight of the word in the air, like a coin flipped and caught without being looked at. You answer to all of it. Answering is part of how you stay alive. At night, when the torches turn the tents into amber lanterns and laurels sweat at the edge of their crowns, he is quieter. He tells you dreams in which Poppaea forgives him. He asks you for yours and does not notice that your dream is a door. You learn to be two people, the ghost he needs and the shadow that watches. Your humor becomes dry enough to crack between your teeth. Careful, you say once to a cupbearer when the emperor is deep in rehearsed grief, or the wine will think it's blood and refuse to be poured. The cupbearer stifles a laugh. The emperor does not hear. You survive the joke and so keep it small. Sometimes he is kind in ways that bruise later. He gifts you a pearl that belonged to Poppaea, and you hold it in your mouth to feel the cool weight of someone else's wealth on your tongue. He teaches you a line from a play about a woman who chooses death rather than dishonor. He thinks this is romantic. You think this is a warning. The empire is a table with one leg shorter than the others. It wobbles with every step he takes, and for a while the wobble is amusing, then it isn't. The treasury is a throat being squeezed. Galba raises his standard in Spain. The Praetorians calculate the worth of their oaths like merchants pricing grain. Nymphidius Sabinus, a man who has stared at power long enough to want it, slides into the vacuum between a frightened emperor and the men who carry swords for him. Rome, which had been pretending to be a theater, becomes a street again. Streets have endings. The Senate turns. The city listens to its own heartbeat and hears a rhythm that is not applause. One dawn, the corridors are quiet in a terrible new way. You can feel the absence of 1,000 footsteps the way a fish can feel the absence of water. He runs. It is almost funny, the smallness of the place where a man like that ends. He asks for poison. He asks for a soldier to do it. He asks for a trench to hide in. He asks for the courage he has rehearsed in so many lines. You are there, because where else would you be? Your life has always been in the margins of his script. Qualis artifex perio, he says. What an artist dies in me, and then he needs help because the line is not enough. You steady the hand because that is part of the role. Bride, ghost, nurse. He dies into a silence the city has been saving for years. The last applause he hears is your breath catching. You are 20 or near it. A widow again for the first time. Grief is a luxury. Survival is work. The body that the empire took from you still has value in a market that deals in symbols. Nymphidius Sabinus, the Praetorian who sold the emperor's safety back to him for too high a price, takes you the way a man takes a trophy from a house he has looted. He calls you Poppaea in public. He calls you treasure in private. He intends to make you his wife in a gesture so perfect with irony that the gods groan. He is killed before he can complete the sentence. The guards he courted decide their loyalty is today, not a dream of tomorrow. You are moved like furniture into the household of Otho, a name that tastes familiar. Poppaea's earlier husband, the man Nero once sent away to be governor of Lusitania so that Poppaea's smile would have fewer witnesses. Otho is smooth, clever, desperate. He admires in you the same lie he once envied in her, the power to make men imagine themselves better than they are. He becomes emperor for a handful of weeks, and for those weeks, you are the empire's most efficient memory. You attend dinners that try too hard to be calm. You drink wine someone else will die for, not tasting first. You memorize the shape of a crown in lamplight, because it never looks the same twice on the same brow. At night, Otho speaks to the space beside your shoulder in a voice meant for a woman you have studied but will never become, because becoming something is not the same as being it. In the morning, he dresses you in garments that say everything he cannot tell a senate that laughs with its teeth showing. You are Poppaea to him, the way a spell is a rope, something to pull on when a man is sinking. He loses. The Tellius wins a battle that tastes like mud and iron and the kind of math men do with lives. Otho opens his veins with a composure Rome will call noble for centuries, because Rome loves a man who does the right thing too late. You are moved again, a parcel with beating heart. The Tellius is different. He is not interested in the private theater of grief. He is hungry for spectacle that eats the spectator. He announces a show. He announces you. The plan is this. You will be dressed as the goddess abducted into the dark. You will be dragged on stage by a man pretending to be a god, pretending to be a king. Rome will watch. Rome will laugh. Rome will clap. The underworld will open where the orchestra seats should be. Everyone will go home with the taste of your humiliation on their tongue, and they will call it bread. For days, you do not speak. Speech seems like a luxury of people whose names fit their bodies. You sit in a room that may be yours and may be a cage and weigh your options as if they were coins. You find only one that buys you anything you want. You choose yourself. There are many ways. You pick a quiet one. One that returns your body to you for a single, unnegotiated moment. The empire can have your story. It will not have your last scene. You script it. You perform it. You close the door behind you. They will say later that you died to protest obscenity. They will say later that you died because there was nothing left of you to live. They will say later that you died because you were weak, because you were strong, because the gods had turned their faces, because the crowd had turned its head. People are generous with explanations when the body that needs them is gone. You die. Rome continues. The theater is never empty for long. You are not a myth, not a parable, not merely an anecdote to be passed around by historians who write clean Latin about dirty things. You were a person whose face accidentally resembled a dead woman's face and so became a shrine. You were a boy, renamed after a seed, so that an emperor could practice agriculture on your body. You were a citizen of a city that needed you to be decoration for its cruelty, and then argued about whether the cruelty was tasteful. What is a life when it is coerced into becoming someone else's apology? What is a name when it is a script with lines you did not write? What is a body when it is an empire's argument about power? You will never know what your voice would have sounded like when it broke into manhood. You will never know whether you would have married, or fished the Tiber, or opened a small shop that smelled of wax and leather, or learned to read the way some men learn to pray. You will never know if Poppaea would have been kind to you, had she lived to see the boy whose face borrowed hers. You will never know if the gods noticed when you stopped pretending to be what a man wanted to resurrect. But we can know you, not completely, not perfectly, not enough to return to you the piece of sky you were entitled to, but enough to say your name without pretending we are saying someone else's. Sporus. Say it as if it were a prayer for the unchosen. Say it as if it were a warning to men who think grief is a license. Say it as if it were a mirror held up to the part of any city, any century, that will still, given a chance, dress a wound as a wedding, and call the screaming music. The records are not tender. They are pocked with bias and envy, scratched with the styluses of men who survived by hating those they wrote about. Suetonius will gleefully catalogue the emperor's indecencies like a merchant listing luxuries imported from the islands. Tacitus will craft a moral tragedy where the city becomes a character fated to fall. Cassius Dio will keep a long ledger of the empire's humiliations and count you among them. From them, we gather this. Nero married a castrated boy who resembled his dead wife and called him by her name. He dressed him as an empress, paraded him at state occasions, took him to Greece, brought him back to Rome. After Nero's death, Sporus passed through powerful hands as if he were both relic and ransom. Nymphidius Sabinus, then Otho. Finally, Vitellius intended to force a public spectacle upon him, the reenactment of a goddess's rape, and Sporus chose death instead. The details blur because details always blur where shame is involved. What remains clear is the silhouette, power gathering a body into itself and naming the act, love. You wake in no place now. You wake in all the rooms you ever woke in at once. The market with its figs, the small room with the blade, the theater seat that smelled of perfume and fear, the tent where Greek crickets droned their endless jury of night. You are at peace, and you are not. You hold the pearl of your life in your palm and feel how smooth it is with handling, how little it weighed and how heavy it was to carry. If there is an afterlife, it is a city. If there is a God, they are a listener. You tell your story. You take your time. No one interrupts. No one calls you another name. Back where we are, centuries later, we try to be better than Rome and also do what Rome did. We watch. We turn suffering into art and then ask the art to justify itself. We argue about taste while a boy is being chosen somewhere for his resemblance to someone the powerful have lost. So we say it again, not to reopen your wound, but to stitch our attention to your memory. You were born. You were taken. You were made into a monument for a man's grief. You were displayed. You were passed around. You refused one last humiliation. You died on your own terms. This is not absolution. This is not even justice. This is an address, a candle lit on a windowsill overlooking a city that still hums like an iron hive. Sporus, seed that became story, shadow that became signal, boy that became a boundary around which an empire revealed its shape. May your name be heavy in our mouths, and may it teach us to ask, before we applaud the show, whose body paid for the ticket?